I never expected to find myself in this situation. Living with my best friend from college seemed like the perfect arrangement after graduation. We'd known each other for 4 years, shared countless late-night study sessions, and even road-tripped across 3 states together during spring break of our junior year. When we both landed jobs in the same city, becoming roommates just made sense. The fact that I had been harboring feelings for him since sophomore year was something I'd gotten used to pushing aside. After all, he was straight, and I valued our friendship too much to complicate things with unrequited emotions. Our apartment wasn't anything special, a modest 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a converted brownstone, with a living room just big enough for a couch and TV, and a kitchen where you couldn't open the refrigerator and oven at the same time. But it was ours, and over the 6 months we'd been living there, we'd fallen into comfortable routines. He'd make coffee in the mornings before heading to his job at the marketing firm downtown, and I'd clean the dishes from dinner the night before while getting ready for my shift at the architectural design studio. We respected each other's space, but enjoyed the companionship that came with sharing a home. My roommate, let's call him Alex, had always been the more outgoing of the two of us. He had this infectious laugh that seemed to bubble up from somewhere deep inside him, and a habit of running his hand through his dark curls when he was thinking hard about something. People were naturally drawn to him, his easy confidence, his genuine interest in others, the way he could tell a story that had everyone hanging on his every word. I'd watched countless people fall for his charm over the years, and I couldn't blame them. I'd done the same, though I'd become an expert at disguising it. That Thursday had been particularly exhausting. I'd been working on a challenging project with a client who couldn't make up their mind, and by the time I dragged myself up the 3 flights of stairs to our apartment, all I wanted was to collapse on the couch and not move for several hours. I hadn't even thought about dinner, assuming I'd scrounge something from the leftovers in our fridge or maybe order delivery if I found the energy. When I opened the door and kicked off my shoes, I noticed the apartment was quiet. Alex usually got home before me on Thursdays and would be watching something on TV or playing music while he unwound from his day. I remember thinking he must have gone out with coworkers, which wasn't unusual. He had a much more active social life than I did. I had just changed into sweatpants and an old t-shirt when I heard his key in the lock. The door swung open, and there he was, grinning widely and holding up a large paper bag that was emanating the most incredible smell, something rich and spicy that made my stomach immediately remind me I hadn't eaten since a hurried lunch at my desk. Perfect timing. Alex called out, kicking the door closed behind him. I was hoping you'd be home. I stopped by that new Thai place that opened up on Maple Street. The line was out the door, but the guy behind me said it was worth the wait. He moved into the kitchen, pulling containers out of the bag. I got enough for both of us. I figured we could have a roomy dinner night since we've both been so busy lately. The gesture caught me off guard. We often ate together, but it was usually planned or at least mentioned in passing earlier in the day. This spontaneous thoughtfulness made something warm unfurl in my chest. I tried not to read too much into it. Alex was naturally considerate, and this was just another example of his friendly nature. Still, I couldn't help the small flutter of hope that always seemed to surface despite my best efforts to suppress it. That smells amazing, I said, moving into the kitchen to help him unpack the food. I'm starving. Today was brutal. Our kitchen was small enough that we had to maneuver carefully around each other, a dance we'd perfected over months of cohabitation. Each brush of his arm against mine sent tiny electric currents across my skin, but I'd learned to ignore those too. Tell me about it, Alex replied, grabbing plates from the cabinet. My boss rejected the entire campaign concept we've been working on for 2 weeks. We're basically starting from scratch. He sighed, but then his expression brightened. But hey, at least we have good food and good company tonight, right? The spread he'd brought home was impressive. Pad Thai, green curry, tom yum soup, and an appetizer platter with spring rolls and sauté skewers. It was far more than we needed for just the two of us, but the abundance felt festive somehow, like he'd wanted to make the evening special. We moved to the living room, setting everything on the coffee table because our actual dining table had become a catch-all for mail, work materials, and random items we hadn't found proper homes for yet. Alex turned on a playlist we both liked, indie folk that provided a pleasant background without demanding attention, and we settled onto the couch. There was something intimate about sitting cross-legged, facing each other with this feast between us. The routine of it was familiar, but something felt different that night. Maybe it was my exhaustion making me more emotionally vulnerable, or maybe it was the way the soft lamplight caught the angles of his face as he served food onto our plates. "We'll share," he said, scooping a generous portion of pad thai onto my plate before adding some to his own. "I wasn't sure what you'd be in the mood for, so I got a variety." He picked up a spring roll, dipped it in sauce, and instead of taking a bite himself, he held it out to me. "Here, try this first." The guy in line said these were life-changing. I hesitated for just a moment, surprised by the gesture. In our years of friendship, we'd certainly shared food before, but there was something about him hand-feeding me that felt unexpectedly intimate. I leaned forward and took a bite, hyper-aware of his fingers just centimeters from my lips. The spring roll was indeed delicious. Crispy exterior giving way to a flavorful filling, but I barely registered the taste, too distracted by the casual intimacy of the moment and the way Alex was watching my reaction. "Well?" he prompted, his eyes bright with anticipation. "Life-changing or just regular good?" I swallowed, trying to compose myself. "Definitely above average," I managed, "but I think I need another bite to determine if it's truly life-altering." I was aiming for humor, for normalcy, but my voice sounded strange even to my own ears. Alex laughed and handed me the rest of the spring roll. "Fair enough. A proper assessment requires thorough sampling." He began serving himself some of the curry, steam rising in fragrant clouds between us. "So tell me about this client that made your day so terrible." And just like that, we fell into our usual rhythm of conversation. I told him about the indecisive client. He shared more details about his boss's rejection of their campaign, and we moved through lighter topics. A movie he wanted to see that weekend, a funny story about my coworker's disastrous date, the latest drama with his sister's wedding planning. The food was excellent, but what I remember most vividly about that night was the way Alex seemed to be paying particular attention to me, his eyes staying on mine a beat longer than usual, the way he laughed more readily at my jokes, how he kept ensuring my plate and glass were never empty. At one point, he insisted I try the green curry, claiming it was the best he'd ever tasted. Before I could reach for the container, he'd already spooned some onto his fork and was holding it out to me. "Trust me, you need to experience this," he said, his voice dropping slightly lower than its usual register. The moment felt charged somehow, suspended in time as I leaned forward to accept the offering. Our eyes met as I closed my lips around the fork, and I could have sworn I saw something flicker in his gaze, something I'd never allowed myself to hope for. The curry was indeed exceptional, creamy and complex with the perfect level of spice, but I was far more focused on the way Alex's expression had softened as he watched me taste it. There was a tenderness there that made my heart race, and for the first time in our friendship, I let myself wonder if maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in feeling something beyond platonic affection. "Good, right?" he asked, his voice still carrying that unusual quality that made every word feel weighted with unspoken meaning. "Amazing," I agreed, not sure if we were still talking about the food. The moment stretched between us, neither of us looking away, until finally Alex broke the tension by clearing his throat and reaching for his water glass. As the evening progressed, these moments continued to accumulate, small touches that lingered, glances that held questions I'd never dared to ask, a closeness that felt both familiar and thrillingly new. When Alex insisted on feeding me the last bite of mango sticky rice we'd been sharing for dessert, his fingers brushed against my lips in a way that couldn't have been accidental, and I found myself unable to dismiss it as nothing. Let me explain why this matters so much. When you've spent years carefully maintaining boundaries with someone you care deeply about, convincing yourself that friendship is enough, moments like these can shake the very foundation you've built your relationship on. Each small gesture becomes loaded with potential meaning, and you find yourself analyzing every interaction, wondering if you're projecting your own desires onto innocent actions or if something is genuinely shifting between you. As we cleaned up after dinner, the kitchen felt even smaller than usual. We moved around each other, putting away leftovers and loading the dishwasher, our bodies constantly finding reasons to brush against one another in ways that sent my thoughts spiraling. At one point, Alex reached past me to put a container in the refrigerator, his chest pressing briefly against my back, his breath warm against my neck. He lingered there for a heartbeat longer than necessary before stepping away, and I had to grip the counter to steady myself. "Thanks for sharing dinner with me tonight," he said as we finished cleaning up. "It's been too long since we've had a night like this." He was leaning against the counter, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "Yeah, it was nice," I replied, aiming for casual but hearing the slight tremor in my voice. "We should do it more often." "We should," he agreed, and then after a pause added, "Actually, there's this new Italian place I've been wanting to try. Maybe we could go there tomorrow night? Like, go out instead of eating here." The emphasis he placed on "go out" made my heart stutter. Was he suggesting what I thought he was suggesting? I searched his face for clues, for confirmation that this wasn't just my wishful thinking interpreting a friendly dinner invitation as something more. Like a dinner out. I asked carefully, giving him the opportunity to clarify, to backtrack if I'd misunderstood. Alex pushed off from the counter and took a step toward me. "Like a date," he said, his voice steady but his eyes revealing a nervousness I'd rarely seen in him. "If you'd want that. With me." The world seemed to pause around us as I processed his words. All those years of carefully contained feelings, of accepting that our relationship would never be more than friendship, suddenly collapsed under the weight of this moment. I found myself nodding before I could even form words. "I'd like that," I finally managed to say. "I'd like that a lot, actually." The smile that spread across his face was radiant, relieved, and touched with something that looked remarkably like tenderness. "Good," he said simply. "That's really good." We stood there in our tiny kitchen, the air between us charged with new possibility, neither of us quite sure what to do next. It was Alex who finally broke the moment, reaching out to briefly squeeze my hand before saying he should probably get some work done before bed. I watched him walk to his bedroom, still trying to process the seismic shift that had just occurred in our relationship. That night, lying in bed, I replayed every moment of the evening, from the first bite he'd offered me to the way he'd said the word date with such deliberate clarity. I thought about all the small moments over the years that I'd dismissed or explained away, wondering if there had been signs I'd missed because I'd been so convinced of the impossibility of my feelings being reciprocated. The next morning brought a new awkwardness as we navigated the space between what we had been and what we might become. We moved around each other in the kitchen with a heightened awareness, both of us smiling too much and talking too little. When Alex left for work, he hesitated at the door before turning back to me. "Still on for tonight?" he asked, and the hint of uncertainty in his voice made my chest ache with affection. "Definitely," I confirmed, and the relief in his smile stayed with me throughout the day. That dinner, our first official date after years of friendship, was both strange and wonderful. We sat across from each other at a table with candles and cloth napkins, talking about many of the same things we always discussed, but with a new layer of meaning beneath every word. There were moments of awkwardness as we adjusted to this evolution in our relationship, but more often there was a sense of rightness, as if we were finally allowing ourselves to acknowledge what had perhaps been developing between us for longer than either of us had realized. When Alex reached across the table to take my hand, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. And later that night, when he kissed me goodnight outside my bedroom door, I understood that some boundaries, once crossed, reveal landscapes more beautiful than you ever dared to imagine. Looking back now, I can see that moment with the takeout. "We'll share," he said, handing me the first bite, as the beginning of something profound. It wasn't just about sharing food. It was about offering a piece of himself, testing the waters of vulnerability, seeing if I would meet him in that space of possibility. And I did. We both did. I don't know what the future holds for us as we navigate this new territory between friendship and romance. Relationships that evolve from deep friendships carry their own unique challenges and rewards. But I do know that I'm grateful for that night, for his courage in taking that first step, and for the chance to discover what might be possible when you allow yourself to hope for more than you thought you could have. Sometimes the most significant moments in our lives don't announce themselves with fanfare. They arrive quietly, disguised as ordinary evenings, as takeout containers on coffee tables, as the simple act of sharing food with someone you care about. It's only in retrospect that we recognize them for what they truly were: doorways to new chapters, invitations to greater intimacy, the beginning of stories we never expected to be part of our lives. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, The person you've been secretly in love with for years brings home dinner for two and says, "We'll share." And in that moment, everything changes. Total_char_count, 13,758.